told Michael, I said, I thought this fit in real well with his lesson on the work creation. So, let us sing.
This is my Father's world, and to my listening ear, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world, I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and sea, his hands of wonder draw. This is my Father's world, the birds and carols raise, the morn like the lily white, declares praise. This is Father's world, he shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass I hear him back, he sings to me everywhere. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the lone seems also strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus tonight shall be satisfied, and earth and heaven be one.
Song for the lesson be page 454. 454. It's an old song. Haven't sang in a long, long time. So old, it was written in 1776, the year of our country's birthday. Well, the words were written anyway. So let's sing.
Rock of ages, stand for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from thy riven side which flow be of sin of pure, cleanse me from his guilt and power, not the labor of my hands can fulfill the laws he meant. Could my zeal arrest and go? Could my tears forever flow? All for sin could not atone. Thou must save, and thou alone. Nothing in my hands I bring, simply to thy cross I cling. Make it come to thee for rest, helpless look to thee for grace. While I to the fountain fly, wash me, Savior, or I die.
Song after the lesson, page 912. 912. Brother Michael.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is another installment of my series on creation versus evolution. And the more I got into this, the more I had to pull. This started out with about speaking for till Thanksgiving, reworked it, got it in a 4-hour section, had to rework it. Actually got it down to 55 minutes. So if I talk pretty quick, I can get it all fit in to this section. But space, the final frontier. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the cosmos and we're going to see how it confirms with the Bible. So one of my first objectives is the glory of God, how the universe portrays the glory of God. Then we're going to look at astronomy basics. These are things that you would learn in any freshman level class of astronomy. And it's surprising because the Bible does talk about astronomy. But when it does, it's right. So keep in mind as we go through this, when the Bible refers to astronomy, as we will be able to see, the Bible is always right because it is the Word of God. And yes, we do have to interpret the Word of God correctly, but when we do, it verifies and it is right. We're going to look at the age of the cosmos. We're going to see how the Bible is right when it comes to the age of the cosmos. We're going to talk about the uniqueness of Earth, the uniqueness of this planet we call Earth. That one we're not going to talk about. I had to remove it so I could fit it into this section. If you'd like to know what the starlight issue is, you could talk to me after, and I'll let you know what the starlight issue is. So let's start off with the glory of God. Psalms 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Now, granted, all things that God created show the glory of God. But I think it's kind of amazing how God would reference the heavens and says, this is going to declare my glory. This is going to proclaim the work of my hands. Did God do it purposely? Good possibility. So, out of all the things I decided to look at and narrow down and pick up and escape and throw out, size and beauty of the universe was the two I decided to pick to reflect the mind of God. So, everybody knows what this is. I assume this is the moon. This is our moon. Of course, it was laid upon a thing that those are not actual stars. That is not an actual picture. The moon is the actual picture, but the stars behind it are not. The moon is approximately in mass the size of the United States of America. It's about the size of the moon. Well, some people might think, well, it's just so far out there. How is it the size of the United States? Well, that's because it's 240,000 miles away. So if you were to look at the United States 240,000 miles away, it would look about that size. And we can kind of understand that. 240,000 miles, if you've had a decent vehicle in your life, you can actually drive 240,000 miles with that vehicle. So if you had a straight road there with, plenty of fuel stations along the way, you can actually drive yourself to the moon. I doubt very highly you'll get back because you'd have to have a vehicle that can go 480,000 miles, and that's just, I haven't seen that. So some people would ask, well, can you see the flag on the moon from when we landed? No, you cannot, because it is the size of the United States. However, the lunar module that went around As you begin to focus in, this is not a very good picture. I do have a laser pointer in my pocket that I was going to use tonight. That right there is the lunar module. And you can see kind of lines going back and forth right there. Well, if we go to the next slide, you can actually see the lines a little bit better. Those are the actual footprints of the astronauts, the path that they took. There's the lunar module right there. Well, how could you see the footprints? Well, that's because the moon has no atmosphere. The moon has no weather. And the moon has no maid service to clean up spots after things have been made. So if you make a footprint on the moon, it's going to stay there for quite a long time. What shape do you think the moon is? Most people would say it's a sphere. And that would be correct. It is a sphere. The amazing thing about that line, wow, it's not even showing up. That line right there. That line registers in our brain as we look at it. Our brain does a bunch of trigonometry subconsciously, and we recognize that it's an actual sphere. That line is going to play a part a little bit later on as well. The moon is about the quarter size of the Earth. There's a halfway decent picture of that. Pay no attention to the sun over there on the side. We're going to get to that here in a minute. But let's look at a planet that's actually bigger. That is Saturn. Saturn is a very amazing planet. Matter of fact, if it was not put in the position it was at, you would never see the rings of Saturn. Those are tiny moonlets that orbit around Saturn, and because of the way God decided to plant that planet, we can actually see the rings around it. If you were to put the Earth inside Saturn, you'd be able to line it up 9 times across. So Saturn is, in diameter, about 9 times the size of the Earth. Saturn itself is just a big old ball of gas. Well, how can that be? It's kind of tough for somebody to imagine how gas could form itself into a sphere. Well, when you have an abundance of it, it can form its own gravity and remain together and look spherical. Now we get to the sun. The sun is approximately 100 Earths across. We're starting to slowly understand the magnitude of it. It is a ball of hydrogen gas. The core of the sun is 15 million degrees Celsius, which comes out to just over 27 million degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty hot. It is 93 million miles away. You can actually drive there. It's just going to take you a little over 160 years to do so. So it is pretty far away. Also with that, the sun gives off enough energy in 1 second than 1 billion cities could use up in a year. So much energy dispenses from it. As we can see in Genesis 1, verse 16, and God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Does this kind of give you a little bit of taste of the power of God? We're not done yet. We just started. That is actually a red dwarf. That is Proxima Centauri. That is actually, it's called a little red dwarf. You can actually fit 10 of those Proxima Centauri stars in the sun. So good for us. We have a sun that's actually big enough and strong enough to give us enough heat to where we can survive. But that also comes back to the uniqueness of Earth. Proxima Centauri is about the size of Jupiter. But let's look bigger. That is Mintaka. That is the right star on Orion's belt. It is known as a blue supergiant. This blue supergiant in particular is about 30 times the size of the sun. And then we have Canopus, which is a white supergiant, which is about 70 times the size of the sun. And that one over there to the right, Antares, I could not find a good picture of it by itself, but Antares is approximately 700 times the size of our sun. Matter of fact, this is a terrible display of the orbits. It is definitely not up to size. The sun actually needs to be considerably smaller in this aspect of it. However, with the distance and everything, if you were actually to take the Antares sun and put it in the exact position where our sun was, it would come all the way just inside the orbit of Jupiter. The planet would be inside of that sun, just to kind of give you a little idea of how big everything is. So then, as we expand out through the rest of our solar system only takes up about 600 billion or 6 billion miles. And then there's nothing for approximately another 600 billion miles. A lot of empty space. And then we begin to see things like this. That is known as a planetary nebula. Essentially what that is there is a star in the center of it which emits gas, and then as it emits the energy, it actually lights the gas. And you see beautiful things like this. They also have this. They have one that is similar to this, as you could kind of see the redness blowing out side to side. They actually think that there might actually be rings around that star, which actually makes the gases and energy push out sideways. They also have what they call a ring nebula. This is a ring nebula. This is next to the star Vega. This is actually 1 light year across. So you might think that a light year is actually a term of time. It is not. It is actually a term of distance. So 1 light year is equivalent to 5.88 trillion miles. So this thing is 5.88 trillion miles long. You can actually see this in the night sky. Most of the things I've showed you already, you can actually see through a small telescope. The problem is, looking through a telescope, we have to do it at nighttime because we can't get through the atmosphere. So the rods of our eyes in our night vision cannot determine colors. You might see color, but if you were to see that in the night sky, it would actually be kind of gray. So what we're going to do, that's actually the Horsehead, what they call the Horsehead Nebula. It goes from that side to that side. It is 22 light years long. 22 light years long, which is 129.36 trillion miles. And then now we're starting to get out amongst the stars after 600 billion miles. And we start seeing things like this. This is what they call the globular star cluster. But with the globular star cluster, all this is part of actually a very larger structure, which we know as a galaxy. Now, this is, most galaxies are spiral galaxies or elliptical. Those tend to be the shapes that they are. We know that the Milky Way galaxy that we live in is a spiral type of a galaxy. Of course, we cannot see that from where we are. You can't take a picture from outside yourself. This is not Star Trek. We can't go out there, take a picture of ourselves, and then beam ourselves back. It doesn't work that way. But through seeing the different stars and the formations, we can actually tell that the Milky Way galaxy is a spiral type of a galaxy. This is known as Stephan's quintet. These are 5 different galaxies. 1, 2, 3, 4, And that's actually a galaxy there. But there's actually only 4 galaxies that are really close together. That other one is kind of like you see kids jump in front of a camera when somebody's about to take a picture. That's pretty much what this galaxy is doing. It's photobombing the rest of them when they decided to take it. But they did decide to keep the name. Most of you have heard of the Hubble telescope. That has been something that's been out for a good while. And they decided to take the Hubble telescope and focus on a region of space that really didn't have much that they could see with the eye. So they focused the Hubble telescope that way. And that is what they found. Those are not stars. Those are all galaxies. And they estimate that every galaxy has approximately 100 billion stars in it, give or take. Could be greater, could be a little less. But they also estimate, with what we've seen up to this point, that there could be in excess of 100 billion galaxies. And the amazing part about the whole thing, God said he named them all. God knows them by name. Anybody know what that is? That is, huh? This is the newest telescope they have out there that actually started taking pictures in July of 2022. This is the James Webb telescope. This is actually this has a lot larger range it can look at. The Hubble telescope can only look so far before it starts using the light to be able to see. Well, this actually has a larger range of light to where it can see farther back. So the secularists decide to make some predictions. They decided to make some predictions. Now, the reason why they made their predictions the way they did is because what most of the secularists believe, that as you are looking farther and farther out there distance-wise, you are looking into the past. That's what they believe because of the starlight issue. They believe looking farther and farther back, you are looking farther and farther back in time. So their predictions are fewer galaxies at great distances, none beyond redshift 14. Now, what redshift 14 is where they believed everything happened. They believed 13.8 billion years ago. That's why they refer to it as redshift 14. Because if you were to look farther back in time, that's before they predicted galaxies were formed. So that's one of their predictions. The farthest and earliest galaxies will have low mass, they'll be clumpy, and they'll be irregular. They will not be formed like a lot of the galaxies we can see. And the farthest galaxies will only have population 3 stars. It will not have any heavy elements. Now, this one caught me by surprise because you think as numbers go up, things would be more advanced. Well, in this type of situation, the population 3 is actually the start, where all you would have is the light elements of hydrogen, helium, and lithium. That's what they believe the first stars were made of, and then they exploded. And then the second round of stars that comes back soaks up those elements because fusion would happen. And as fusion happens, then the heavier elements of oxygen, carbon dioxide, all that other kind of stuff gets mixed in, and then the stars suck that in, and then galaxies start to form. There's a creationist named Dr. Jason Lyles. He is an astrophysicist. Also, Russ Humphreys, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Dr. Jason Lyles also made predictions, and he made these predictions in January of 2022. And the James Webb Telescope didn't start taking pictures till May or June. His prediction, because he is a creationist and he believes God's word, said lots of galaxies at great distances, even beyond redshift 14. The farthest galaxies fully formed massive and well structured. The farthest galaxies have population 1 and population 2 stars, detectable heavy elements. Now, before I get to the pictures of what it actually showed, population 1 and population 2 stars, how do they determine the elements that are in a star? They have things attached to the telescope that is known as a spectrometer. Basically, what a spectrometer does is as it looks at a certain element, it designates a color, or it gives off a color. That color registers what element is there in the galaxy. So he also made another prediction that secularists will respond to their failed predictions with statements like, Webb discovers that galaxies form much earlier than previously thought. There's the picture that was found. Several well-formed galaxies well beyond redshift 14. So what's the results of the James Webb data? Lots of galaxies at great distances, even beyond redshift 14. Farthest galaxies fully formed, massive and well structured, and they do have population 1 and population 2 stars. Dr. Jason Lyle's predictions were correct. Secular responses. The galaxy started forming much earlier than many astronomers previously thought. Massive galaxies formed earlier in the universe than previously known. Evidence is building that the first galaxies formed earlier than expected. It's amazing. The universe we have out there, the galaxies we have out there. And what does God say about it? He made the stars also. Just a little cliff note. Yeah, I did this. Enjoy the view. He made the stars also. See, we come to realize 5 out of the 6 creation days were spent dealing with Earth. 1 was for the heavens and the stars. So let's look at some astronomy basics. The Bible does touch on astronomy, and we will see that as the Bible touches on astronomy, that it is correct. And this has always been the case, even when the secular experts of the time disagreed. For instance, God is in italics. I put that there to reference he, has inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. Job 26, verse 10. Well, what does that mean? Remember I said that line's going to come into play? That line right there. Astronomers call that a circular terminator. When I heard that, I laughed, because the first thing I come to whenever I hear Terminator is the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. And I'm thinking you could have picked a better term, but that is what they refer to as a circular terminator. And what that is, essentially is the only way to get a circle is if what you're dealing with is a sphere. The only way to have those lines to go completely around the way it is and actually have a circle to what the Bible refers to is the earth has to be a sphere. So Job was written around 2000 BC. And it wasn't until around 500 BC that things started to change, but around the 500 BC area and before, most of the pagan cultures believed that the earth was a flat disk, that they lived on land that kind of hovered or floated on water. Most astronomy textbooks accredit Pythagoras for claiming that the world was round. He made that claim around somewhere between 500 and 400 BC, but they also credit Aristotle for actually proving it. And that was somewhere around the 400 to 300 BC. And then we find out from the Bible that the earth floats in space. He stretches out to the north over an empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. Job 26:7. God told us the earth will be suspended by nothing. It's kind of amazing because I could picture people, picking up their Christmas ornaments, going to set them on the tree, and then by some miraculous thing, they accidentally missed the tree, but it's just sitting there hanging. Laws of physics don't allow that to happen. But when God is involved, he could hang the earth on nothing, and he did. Then you have the expansion of the universe. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, which states that God stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. In the late 1920s, they came out with what's called the Hubble law. One thing the Hubble telescope was able to do is, because it was designed in such a way to be able to measure the distance between the galaxies that they saw. And it was very detailed, and it is, when I say very good at measurements, I'm talking within feet. Measuring galaxies within feet of each other. And they saw over time that the universe was expanding. So then we have the question, well, if the universe is expanding, so wouldn't it be smaller back then? Well, yes, of course it would be smaller back then. But doesn't the Big Bang predict everything started from a point? No, it doesn't. Because the expansion of the universe was very well known before the thought of the Big Bang ever came about. The thought of the Big Bang came out around 1931. I can't remember the gentleman's name at this time, but he was a naturalist. He did believe in God. He just didn't believe that God had any part in doing this. He believed in the natural order, and his reasoning behind it was the Big Bang. And then that was adopted along the line and farther. But let's be honest about everything. Some of us are expanding. But I'm pretty sure we didn't go back to a point 13.8 billion years ago. We're just expanding. Then you have the conservation of mass and energy. This was particularly interesting for me. I actually got into pretty good detail with it, and I realized I couldn't do that because I was sidetracking myself. But Genesis 2:2, God ended his work. He created 6 days, then he rested. He was done creating. John 1:3, all things were made by him. These are the key words, because what the conservation of mass and energy is that those things are constant. They do not go away. They may change form, but they do not go away. And nothing new, no new material comes into existence. It is constant. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3, Christ, I put that in italics again, upholds all things. In Colossians 1:17, in him all things hold together. We exist because God allows us to. He allows this universe to continue. He is in control of everything all the time. If he let go of control, well, I'd hate to see what happens if that was to happen. No material will cease to exist because he upholds all things. He holds all things together. Now, the conservation of mass was founded by a French guy in AD 1785. The conservation of energy, Mayer and Joule in 1842. Now, Joule was a Bible believer. He was a creationist. I do not know about the rest of them. I tried to find that out, but I couldn't. And mass and energy equivalence, where mass and energy are the same exact thing, it's just figured differently. And that was a very well-known one by the name of Albert Einstein in 1905. There are innumerable suns, or not suns, innumerable stars. God does mention that as well. Abraham's descendants, as numerous as the stars of the heavens and the sand which is on the seashore. Genesis 22:17. And then farther down in 32:12, which is too great to be numbered. Now, back there during that time when these books and stuff were written, they didn't have any telescopes. Nothing. They can only see with their eye. But the amazing thing, looking with your eyes into, if it's a nice clear night, you can see anywhere between 3,000 to 10,000 stars in the sky. And yes, you can count them all if you would like to. It'd be incredibly tedious. But you can actually do that. But then in 1608, the telescope was invented by Le Perchet, and then Galileo in 1610 actually used it and decided to face it upwards into the night sky. And then he documented his discoveries. Billions and billions and billions of stars and galaxies. So, whenever the experts of the day have disagreed with the Bible always turned out to be right. Have we learned the lesson yet? So, the age of the cosmos. The Bible is right when it addresses the age of the universe and everything within it. But the question is, how can we make a good argument from science to prove a 6,000-year-old Earth? It's called an internal critique. So essentially what we're going to do here for the next short little minute is we are going to accept the secular assumptions as a hypothetical and show how it leads to an inconsistency. We are not believing their stance. We are taking their stance for a minute to show that it leads to an inconsistency. For example, these are some of the things, before we get to that, these are some of the things that they use, which is naturalism. Things tend to happen naturally over time. And then uniformitarianism. It took me a very long time to be able to say that. But that is that everything kind of has a constant to it. So naturalism and uniformitarianism. Heat from Jupiter. The sun sends heat to Jupiter. For every 1 unit the sun sends to Jupiter, it emits 2.3 times that, or 2.13 times that. So essentially, over time, Jupiter should end up turning out to be ice. But yet there's still massive amounts of heat there. If something is given 1 and it expels 2, can it last? No, it can't last. Kind of like the federal government. It's not going to last very much longer if they keep doing the same thing. But then there's also Neptune, which is actually worse. It actually emits 2.6 times. It's also smaller than Jupiter and also farther away. Can it survive thousands of years? Yes. But once you get to around 1 million year mark, if you go at the same rate of 1 to 2 options, Jupiter and Neptune should be desolate, ice, barren, completely. No heat coming from them, nothing. But yet it does. It could do that for 6,000 years. It can't do it for billions of years. It's almost like putting a potato in the microwave, taking a potato out of the microwave. It's really hot. You can feel the radiated heat off of it. After 5-10 minutes, you no longer feel the radiated heat off of it. You can actually grab it, move it around, do what you want with it. Jupiter and Neptune are just larger sized potatoes. They're going to run out of energy. Earth's magnetic field. This is actually amazing. If anybody has ever wrapped copper wire around like that and then attached it to a battery, you can actually make yourself a magnet and pick stuff up with it. It's actually really cool. We had to do that at work a few times. But the Earth does have an electrical core that produces this magnetic field. But then again, with everything, magnetic fields decay over time. The battery runs out. This is where we get into Dr. Russ Humphreys. In 1982, he made predictions on 2 planets, Uranus and Neptune, their magnetic fields. He made predictions in 1982 before our, I'm just going to call it our module that we sent out there to take recordings and stuff of these. It was one of those. I don't remember which one. And he decided to make predictions on the magnetic fields of Uranus and Neptune. He did that in 1982 based off of a 6,000-year Earth. 1984, it passed by Uranus. His calculations were exactly correct. The secularists who believed in billions of years, they thought it was a dead planet. They didn't think there was any magnetic field. They were wrong. He was right. He was also right about Neptune as well, and as well as the secularists thought it was a dead planet. Then we have lunar recession. Did you know that the moon goes away from us a little bit each year? At this current rate, it's going away from us 1.5 inches a year. And around the 6,000-year mark, it would have been about 750 feet closer. Well, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. It's 240,000 miles away. We can give a few. That's true. But if we keep rewinding a clock and using that the uniform one, the constant one, and we keep going back in time, and you bring it back about 1.4 billion years, the moon would be inside the Earth. Granted, that's still a very long time, but it's far shorter than the 4.5 billion years that they claim it to be. The science just doesn't work. Now, 6,000 years ago, could it have been created 750 feet closer? Of course. Now, why is it moving away? The reason why it's moving away is because the Earth rotates counterclockwise. Imagine it going that direction, and the moon going the same way too. The problem is the Earth rotates faster than the moon does. And if you're in space, if the astronauts wanted to get higher up into space, they would have to start moving. In order to move out, you had to move forward. And being that the Earth is spinning faster than the moon is, the tidal forces kind of give that moon that little extra push to kind of push it up. It's kind of what I talked about before with the laws of angular momentum. Spinning that way, once things get released, it can angle outward. So now we're going to talk about a unique Earth. The Bible is right about the special nature of Earth, the planet God formed to be inhabited. Isaiah 45:18. He is the God who formed the earth and made it. He established it and did not create it a waste place, but formed it to be inhabited. What about our neighbors, Mercury, Venus, Mars? Why aren't we on any of those planets? Well, Mercury, even though it rotates around the sun pretty quickly, because it rotates around the sun pretty quickly, the rotation of Mercury moves very, very slowly. When you are on the sun side of Mercury, it is over 800 degrees Fahrenheit. When you're on the dark side of Mercury, negative 1200 degrees. No way to survive. Venus will kill you several ways. The forces, the compacting forces of gravity on Venus are so extreme that it will crush you like a tin can. And if that doesn't kill you, then the sulfuric acid cloud that surrounds the whole planet would kill you. And if that doesn't kill you, the planet itself is around 900 degrees. I guess, which way do we want to die? Then we look at Mars. Mars, you actually die slower on Mars. If you can hold your breath, that's about how long you have to live. It does have an atmosphere, but the atmosphere is carbon dioxide. So basically, you'd have to bring stuff with you to be able to breathe because you wouldn't be able to. This is kind of like the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Mercury and Venus, it's too hot. Mars, it's too cold. Earth, it's just right. Just the right amount of gravity. Just the right amount of atmosphere. But the most amazing thing that I found doing this was not the fact that we're just in the right place. God made this world to be inhabited, that we could see the beauty of the universe out there. The most amazing part of the unique earth was that God decided to walk on it. God decided to walk on the earth for us, with us, to save us. That's amazing. But that is space. That is this beauty of space. That is the glory of God. And that is our unique earth. If there is anyone who does have a need, we ask that you do come as together we stand and we sing.
Days are filled with sorrow and care, hearts are lonely and drear. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Jesus is very near. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Calvary, Calvary. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Jesus is very near. Cast your care on Jesus today, leave your worry and fear. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Jesus is very near. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Calvary, Calvary. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Jesus is very near. Troubled soul, the Savior can see, every heartache and tear. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Jesus is very near. Birds are lifted at Calvary, Calvary, lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you. Brother Paul, would you dismiss us, please?